Imagine a war fought not only with guns and trenches, but with gold, debt, and deception. A war where the silent weapon wasn't a bullet, it was a banknote. This is the hidden financial battle behind World War I. A conflict that reshaped the global economy, shifted empires, and built the financial world we live in today.
By the summer of 1914, the world seemed unstoppable. Global trade flourished, banks stretched their power across continents, and the gold standard held the illusion of stability. But beneath that glittering surface, nations were quietly preparing for war, not just with armies, but with their treasuries. The true battlefield wasn't only the Western Front. It was inside the vaults of London, Berlin, Paris, and New York. And when the first shots were fired in Sarajevo, a second invisible war began, one fought in the language of money.
When Germany invaded Belgium, the financial foundations of Europe cracked overnight. Panic spread through stock exchanges. Ordinary people rushed to withdraw gold, and governments scrambled to freeze the flow of money. The Bank of England suspended gold convertibility, a move that, for decades, had seemed unthinkable. For the first time, paper money wasn't guaranteed by gold, but by the will of the government. The era of financial certainty was over. Across Europe, treasuries worked day and night not to print propaganda, but to print money. In London, Britain used its greatest weapon, the financial empire that spanned the globe. Through the City of London, it could raise loans, control global trade routes, and, most importantly, cut its enemies off from the world's financial lifelines. A few hundred miles away, in Berlin, the Reichsbank faced isolation. Germany's gold reserves were limited. Its access to international capital was strangled by the British naval blockade. So Berlin turned inward, financing the war through massive bond drives and the printing press. Ordinary Germans lined up in the streets to buy war bonds, believing their savings would build victory. But in truth, every bond sold was a promise the government couldn't afford to keep, with catastrophic consequences. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, America was still officially neutral, but money knows no neutrality. In a quiet office on Wall Street, J.P. Morgan and Co. began underwriting enormous loans to Britain and France. Through these secretive deals, U.S. dollars began fueling the Allied war machine. Munitions, food, and supplies flowed eastward, and in return, mountains of debt flowed westward. By 1916, Morgan was not just a banker, he was the Allies' financial commander. And the United States, still technically out of the war, had already chosen its side in the balance sheets. While soldiers fought in muddy trenches, the British Navy enforced an invisible blockade, not only of ships, but of money. German assets abroad were frozen. Trade routes through neutral countries were pressured or shut down. Even neutral bankers were warned, deal with the enemy, and London will remember. The result was devastating. Without access to credit or foreign goods, Germany's industries began to starve. Inflation crept upward, and by 1917, the price of basic food had tripled. The home front was collapsing long before the trenches did. In 1917, the illusion of neutrality shattered. The U.S. entered the war, and with it, the full weight of its industrial and financial might. Liberty bonds were launched in a storm of patriotic fervor. Posters covered every city wall. Buy bonds, beat the Hun. Millions of Americans Factory workers, farmers, even children bought into the promise that their dollars would bring peace. And for the first time in history, the United States became the world's great creditor. When the guns fell silent in 1918, Europe owed America more than it could ever repay. But victory on the battlefield did not mean victory in finance. Germany emerged exhausted, its treasury empty, its money-printing machines smoking from overuse. When the Treaty of Versailles demanded reparations, Berlin faced an impossible equation. Pay impossible sums in gold it didn't have to creditors who controlled the world's capital. So it printed more money, and more, and more. By 1923, the German mark was worth less than the paper it was printed on. People burned banknotes to heat their homes. Children played with stacks of currency like building blocks. The hidden financial war had produced its final casualty, the German economy itself. While Europe drowned in debt, a new empire quietly rose, not of land or colonies, but of credit. The center of global finance shifted from London to New York. The United States held the gold, the debts, and the power to decide the terms of peace. Banks like Morgan and Chase expanded across the world. The Federal Reserve, barely a decade old, emerged as a key player in shaping international markets. The war had rewritten the rules of global finance. It was no longer about who had the biggest army, but who could finance it longer. The financial war didn't end. It simply changed shape. Debt became diplomacy. Loans replaced alliances. And every nation, friend or foe, was bound together by the same invisible chain: interest. From 1919 to 1929, the world tried to rebuild, but it was rebuilding on credit. The Dawes Plan, the Young Plan, each was an attempt to balance debts that could never truly be paid. And when the system finally cracked again in 1929, the Great Depression reminded everyone the ghosts of World War I still haunted the global economy. So what was this war really about? Territory? Ideology? Or something deeper? Control of the world's financial bloodstream? Every bullet fired, every ship launched, every trench dug was funded by the silent machinery of banks and bonds. The soldiers fought with rifles, the bankers fought with numbers, and in the end, it was the financiers, not the generals, who decided who could keep fighting and who would collapse. The hidden financial battle behind World War I didn't end in 1918. It continues to shape our world. In every debt crisis, every economic downturn, and every struggle for control over money itself. Because if history teaches us anything, it's this: wars may end on the battlefield, but the fight for financial power never does. This is Finance Unfolded, where money meets history. If you found this story eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time as we uncover the next great financial battle that shaped our world.